Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything. I'm coming at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to make some roads. We're going to make some roads for my 28mm bolt action game. But guess what? I can use these roads for Hail Caesar. I can use it for Black Powder. I can use it for Warhammer Fantasy, 40K, role-playing. These are basically just going to be country dirt roads that you can use for any gaming. Now, I'm making them 4 inches wide, so you probably wouldn't use those for your micro armor. Okay, you would use these for your maybe 20mm, but 28mm for sure. I was turned on to this material. It's right here. I've got a sheet of it right here. This was free. Okay, this material was free. It seems like it's kind of flexible, right? It's kind of wobbly, but that's because it's so big. Once you start getting it down to a very small cut, okay, when you get it cut down to about this large, right, it's actually fairly rigid. You're not going to be, it's great for a road. Okay, now this is the plywood that I have been using. I've been paying $1.50 for a 4-inch by 12-inch piece of plywood at Hobby Lobby, right? So what I've done was I've taken this EPVC, I think that's extruded PVC. It's basically foam board, but the foam inside is pressed so tight that it's a solid piece. I don't know if that will ever focus on that, but this is it's not a foam, it's a solid plastic, basically, a PVC. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it out, I'm going to draw some patterns on here, I'm going to cut them out, and then we're going to go ahead and make them. Give me a second, I'll be right back. Alright guys, I need to put my eyes on. Now, a little bit of forethought, a little prior planning. I used graph paper. I drew some patterns out of how I wanted to do that on the board here. Okay, now, without even using a ruler, I could take my X-Acto knife and I can cut through this. I'm going to use a ruler only because I'm anal. Alright, so now I got my main roads cut out, right? I got them 4 inch by 12 inch. But now I have some intersections that I've cut out these pieces to do intersections. These are going to be 4-way intersections, and these are going to be 3-way intersections. And what I've done is I've marked spots, a couple of ticks on each one of these where the roads would butt up with the road intersection, you know, with the road. So just like that. But I don't want them to be square like this, so I plan to cut out the 4 corners. So here we go. And this is just going to be free-handed. It doesn't have to be. There you go. There you go. And then you got your corners cut out. So now I'm going to do that with all of these, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got my intersections cut out, right? So now what I need to do is bevel the edges. And all I do is take my X-Acto and I just trim off. You can see how easy it cuts. And all I'm doing is giving it kind of like maybe a little steeper than 45 degrees, or more shallow, I guess, less of a sharp angle, so that figures can rest on the corner and it blends in with the terrain a lot more just by having that gradual angle on it. Alright, so let me cut these out and then I'll be right back and show you the beveled edges. I don't know if my focus will show you that. but you can kind of see how it got beveled right there. All right, let me bevel the rest and I'll be right back. Okay, now that I've got them beveled, right, both edges are great. I've got the curves beveled as well as the side, not the ends, because that's where the two roads are going to meet, right? So you're going to have multiple roads, intersections, possibly more roads. Now some of these roads you can cut at an angle or curve so that you could have it go something like that if you wanted, or you can pretty much do whatever you want with this stuff. And I plan to make enough roads to cover at least 8 feet long. So I'm going to need 8 of these straights, right? I need 8 straights to cover an 8-foot long table. Even though most of my games are going to be on a 6-foot table, sometimes I might have an 8-foot table, 4x8. And then sometimes I might even have a 5x9, but I don't know. But before we put the texturing on there, there's a couple of different techniques that you can use to prevent your ePVZ from warping. One technique is to use popsicle sticks. Okay, so if you have these coffee stirrers or popsicle sticks, these are the ones that are really thin. These are like, how big are these? 1/4 inch across, and they're rounded edges. You can take 2 of these and glue them down onto the ePVC right along the line, right along the edge. Okay, and then later, once we go to texturing, you can cover that with your plaster. Let's see. I've got one of those done that way, right here. This was a popsicle stick row covered with plaster. Okay, I do not like this technique. Okay, just FYI, it is a technique to prevent this from warping, but I don't like that technique. There's another technique out there called tensioning. And what you do is you take tape, and I use packing tape. This is what I use when I send out my eBay shipments. 3M Scotch clear. I have heavy duty tape. And what I do is I pull out a foot of it, maybe a little more. I flip my road upside down, and then I glue this. I tape this directly to the back. This is 4 inches. This is just under 2 inches. So I can actually put this along the outside edges Okay, that's the right side. Get rid of any air bubbles, any creases, wrinkles. Okay, now what you'll see is, on this one I pulled it off just a little bit too far. Okay, because you know my estimations aren't perfect. Get in there and just cut it off at the edge. All right, you just cut that little piece off, and you just cut this little piece off. Okay, so now what that does is, because this is a non-stretch tape, this will not want to warp because the tape is, it would be pulling against the tape. So this is actually pretty sturdy, okay? It's not going to warp when you apply the texturing. Now, I think I would like to do that on these as well. I don't think, because they're smaller pieces, I really don't think that's going to warp. I really don't think this is going to warp, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so now on the four-way intersection, I went ahead and taped it this way as well as this way. And because that tape is so thin, and you'll never see the bottom of this, when you got it on the gaming table, it's going to lay flat. Alright, now I made these big enough so that if I had tanks, 28mm tanks, they're going to fit on the road intersection. Alright, so now the next step is the messy step. Alright, so I thought I'd bring it up a little bit closer. I can put this away now that I've already got them taped. And these are the ones we're going to be working with. These are all beveled. These are all taped. And they're all ready to go. So what I'm using is a spackling called Drydex. It goes on pink, and the reason why I like it is when it dries white. So there's no guessing or figuring it out. Why is it dry or when is it dry? When it's dry, it'll be white. When it's wet, it'll be pink, or it'll have like a little purplish tint to it. Okay, and so what I do is I just use my spackle applicator, which is my right forefinger. Scoop. Now you see about how much I picked up, right? And then I just lay it on there and start squiggling it around. Okay, that amount that I grabbed was probably about half as much as you need on a road. There, I grabbed a second wad, okay, and get all this stuff out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm basically going to cover the entire thing. Sometimes you can cover the edges, the ends, the sides. Not necessary, but I probably will. I'm not going to cover the ends, but I will sometimes cover the beveled edges. Okay, and this is on too thick, as you can see. I need to spread it around so it can thin out, right? Probably should put some wax paper down or something so that I don't get it all over my cutting board. But you know what? So what? Cutting board can handle it. Okay. Okay, spreading it around. Got a little spot there that needs to be done. Okay, so pretty much everything's been covered. Now, here's where the tricky part is. It's real easy on the straightaways, but on anything that's like this, it's not a straightaway. You can't just leave it like that, right? I can't anyway. So what I do is I pretend my finger is traffic. Whoops, not that finger. Messed that up. Okay. I pretend my finger is traffic. Now, which way does the traffic go, right? The traffic kind of goes this way, but it also kind of goes this way, and this way, sometimes this way, sometimes it goes straight. Sometimes it goes straight. And it's okay to have divots and ruts. And what some people will do is they will go in and they will model each like wheel, or you know, they'll take a tank and they'll push down and then you'll see the track marks or something. I don't want to do that. It's not necessary. I don't have any extra track anyway. Kind of like that. I don't know if you can see that. We're going to let this dry. This is not finished by any stretch of the imagination. We still have to grip this and do all kinds of other things to it. But this is the start. This is where the spackle goes. Now I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm going to let this dry. It'll turn white. I'm going to do, while this is drying, I'm going to do the rest of these, and then we'll be right back. Alright guys, now I am sealing this up. I had already finished the last one just now, and as you can see my finger, I need to get it taken care of. But one of the ones I did earlier, it's almost all white. I mean, it's still drying. You can see the difference between the two, but we're going to have to let it dry. When it's done, I'll be right back. it's not 100% dry. As you can see, there is still a little bit of pink kind of shining through there. But that's okay. It's almost completely dry. It's just not. So, but in the meantime, right before it finishes drying, what we can do is we can apply grit. And as you can see, I've got a sand and ballast mix, okay? And this looks like it might need a little bit more sand. Alright, so we've got our sand and ballast mixture. What I need to do now, I guess, is put some glue into our palette. Hopefully that's on camera. Yeah, if it's not, it's alright. I'm putting glue down inside my palette, or maybe not enough. That should be enough. For at least the first one, right? Okay. And then I add, I do about 50-50 water with white PVA glue. And then I mix it up, and you can use your brush to mix it up. It's no big deal. You want it to be completely mixed. You don't want to see PVA floating around inside of water. Okay, there we go. Now, I'm going to pick one that's a little bit more dry. This is one I've done a few days ago. Okay, so, and I've just been waiting to do this video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this along the slope, right? But I'm also going to apply about a 1/4 of an inch, maybe more. It's going to be random, maybe a 1/2 inch into towards the center of the road. Okay, so you get your slope and part of the flat. And then what we do is we take our grit and we sprinkle it onto the part that I applied the glue, along with this large stones. Okay, and normally what I would do is let that sit for a few minutes, but I am going to let that sit, and I'll be back in a jiffy. Alright, so once I shake off any excess, this is what you get. You get a little bit of grit along the outer edge. And I'm going to do that again on this side. And you got your grit. And that's okay to have that. Fix that up. There we go. And so there we go. And now we're going to let this set off to the side as the pink dries. So let's go ahead and do another one. As you can see, this is still slightly pink. That's okay. I'm using a soft bristle brush, not my normal testers. My tester's brush is a little bit too stiff, and it has a tendency to scratch or tear up the plaster. Okay, we don't want that. We want the plaster to stay. Perfect. Okay, let me do all the straights, and then I'll be back for the road intersections. Alright guys, now on this one, this is a straightaway, but I wanted to kind of point this one out, because I'm doing something a little different with this one. I'm still putting it along the edge, and I'm still putting it at about a 1/4 of an inch into the flat part, right? But towards the center here, I'm putting a big bulge into the road. Okay? Good. So you'll see once I grid it where that bulge is. Okay, so looking at this, you can see that there is a bulge in the road. Now on the other side, I'm going to put a bulge here, not there, and here. So it'll look like the road is doing one of these numbers. There, and now you got this winding road going through here. Okay. Alright, now on the intersections, right, they're both exactly going to be the same. I'm just going to put it along the edges here, 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 and there. Nothing special. Alright, same thing with that one. So when I get done, I'll be right back. And there you go. You get your... Now what I've done was, I didn't just follow the curve, I actually kind of widened it up a little bit on all of them. Okay. Alright, and there is your intersection, your T intersection, right? Okay. Well, not counting the intersections, just the straightaways. There's this thing about rural roads. When you go to a rural road, a road out in the wilderness or in a farmland or something like that, you get usually two ruts. You get a rut on the left and the right, and there's usually like a little patch of grass or a raised area, like a bump, right in the middle of your road. So to get that effect, what I'm going to do is take some glue, and I'm going to put some spots, not a whole lot, yeah, I guess a whole lot, but not the whole thing. See, there's a spot, and then they don't have to touch, they can be separate. And it's going to be about a ½ inch wide. There we go. And then what you get is like a raised bumpy area, and that one's got a lot of rocks on it. There you go. Set it off to the side. I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. Alright, so we got to let these guys dry, and once they're dry, then we'll go ahead and go to the next step where we'll start painting them. Alright, I'll be back once that pink is dry and the flock is dried, or the grit. Be right back. Alright guys, now I just wanted to show you, we've got all the things dried, and I spray paint everything with this light tan color. What that tan color is, let's see if I can find it. I think it's my Krylon River Stone. Here it is, Krylon Fusion River Stone, Riverbed Stone, or something like that. And it's basically a really super light tan color. I got this originally to do multicam paint jobs, but it's great for putting an undercoat onto your road. So if you paint it, it makes your grit even, it kind of seals it down so it's steel, except for this one little piece of stone that just fell off. But that'll happen. The bigger stones don't always catch on the watered down Elmers. Sometimes you have to use full strength Elmers for the large stones. I'm going to take this real brown, right, and I mix up a watered down version of real brown. I put a little piece of it in here, and then I add quite a bit of water. And then what, okay, it's not coming out of this bottle. All right, and there's a little bit of real brown there, and then I'm going to add about maybe a 4 or 5, maybe even a 10-to-1 water. I'm kind of pouring the water in there. And then I'm going to mix it up using my brush. Now, what I just created was a wash. This is a brown wash for the roads. You can see how some of the other roads have already been washed, but I just wanted to show you how I was going to do it on this one last piece. Now, on the grit, you don't want to brush it. You don't want to use brush strokes. So what I do is I dab it on. I just push down on the paint, the brush onto the grit, and just let the paint drop in there. Because it's so watered down, it's almost like I'm just applying dirty water to it. There's a little stone came off. Okay, no problem. Just get it out of the way because I don't need all those stones anyway. It's got too many in the first place. I'm just focusing on the center. You can focus on whatever side you want to focus on, or yeah, here we go. We'll do the sides, and again, I'm just dabbing. I'm dabbing. I'm not stroking the brush. The reason why I don't stroke the brush is because it'll strip the grit off, or it'll strip the stones off. So I just dab it down. And let me go ahead and get this whole thing dabbed down, and I'll be right back. Okay, now once you get all of the grit dabbed down and it's all wet from the dirty paint, the wet paint, what you do is you now take long brush strokes along the body of your road. Now remember that you put you put plaster or the spackle putty all along the road, so there's going to be texture. That putty actually texturizes the road for you. Some people will add grit or sand to the entire road. I think that's unnecessary. Maybe a little bit here and there would be fine, but that takes away from the raised grit areas in the center and the sides, so I tend not to do that. Okay, so I take long brush strokes because you don't want to have short brush strokes, because what that'll do is it'll cause that. So you go all the way from end to end. And that way you don't get these artificial lines. Now I do paint the ends as well. All this is just a watered down brown. And so what that will help in is if I didn't cut these roads perfectly straight, if I cut that 4-inch line right there, if it's got any kind of jagged edge or imperfect line, when I butt two roads up against each other, it'll still disappear in the undercoat. Okay, so I'm going to set that off to the side. But if you notice the grit areas, the grit is brown. But because I watered this paint down so much that it's not, it only what am I trying to say? The brown soaks into the sand, and then the raised area of the sand, it looks like I dry brushed it, when in fact you never did. You just applied a wash. Let's let these dry, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, welcome back. Now the brown has dried, and I basically want to kind of show you the effect that you get from that. It looks like, if you look closely, it looks like you painted it brown and then dry brushed it, which in fact it was actually done in reverse. We painted it light tan and washed it with the brown, so the dark brown kind of settles into all the cracks and the raised areas stay the tan. So it looks like I went through and dry brushed it, when in fact I did not. Alright, so now the next step is flock, and what we're going to do is I'm going to use my brown and green flock that I've had for a while, and what we're going to do is we're going to throw some white glue. I go through a ton of PVA. I think I'm going to get me one of those big gallon drums. Okay, so we got some PVA in there, We're going to add some water. I might have went too much with the PVA in there. That's okay. We'll just fill the water up. You've probably seen me do this a million times before. So I don't want to see white PVA floating inside of a water bath. What I want them to be is mixed. So now, how much of the edge do I want to put grass on? That's a decision you have to make. I don't normally do the entire thing, but I do at least, I don't know, 70%. I do quite a bit. Okay, so you see that amount. And then what I'll do is, I'll sprinkle it on. Shake off the excess. And you get this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap, and then I do it again. Do about 2 or 3 inch sections. Some can be longer than others. You get it looking like that. Alright, now I also want to do that in the center. The whole reason why I put grit in the center was so that I could flock it. That was the whole plan. And that way you get a little bit of grass on the inside as well. Does it have to be 100% coverage? No. Actually, I prefer not to be 100% coverage. If I'm going to do all this work to grit it, to put grit on it, and then do the whole spray and wash, or even if I dry brush it, why do I want to do all that work if I'm just going to cover it with flock? Okay, so there you go, and you can kind of see some grit shining through. Alright, let me finish this road piece, and I'll be right back. Alright, so this guy has been flocked, and I think this color is called burnt grass. This is a Woodland Scenics flock, so it's not a sawdust flock, it's actually a foam flock. So it's a soft flock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do all the roads, and then we'll get back and we'll do the final step. Alright, now while I'm still working on these, I do want to take this opportunity to say that if you ever make a mistake, or let's say you put grit on, but for some reason you forget to put a glue in a certain area, or your grit just doesn't stick to a certain area, and it looks like it's a failure, don't worry about it. Because this step right here is the perfect step to cover up any mistakes. So if you see something, a missing part that doesn't have any grit, or something's showing, that's where you probably want to apply some flock, because that'll cover up any mistakes that you make. Alright, let me finish these up. I'll be right back. Alright, now for this final step, what I did was I went ahead and plucked out. I've got a bucket, here it is actually. I have a bucket of clump foliage, right, that I have large chunks, little pieces, you know, different colors. Unfortunately, I have this yellowish clump foliage in there, and it's in such large pieces that it looks like foam. That just looks like foam. So I'm like from a mattress pad or something. I am not going to use any of that yellow unless I find a piece that looks, you know, worthy or not. So all I'm going to be using is the red pieces that I've got, which I've only got one in here it looks like, and the light green and the dark green. Okay, those are the only ones that I'm going to be using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a road right? This is one of the roads we've been working with. Let's see if I can't get you guys a little bit closer. Alright, so now all I do is I take some straight up PVA or straight up Elmer's glue, and I pick some spots that I like, or where I fancy. And maybe I should open this up. There we go. I fancy this spot, and I'm just going to put a drop there, and I fancy this spot, just going to put a drop. That's a big drop. And then I'm going to put a drop maybe over here. Okay, not too many drops. Now I'm going to find a piece of clump foliage, like this piece. And I'm just going to press it into the Elmers. Find another piece of clump foliage. A little combination of green and yellow, that'd be fine. Now what I'm doing is I'm kind of pushing it and mashing it down into that Elmer's. There we go. Here's a good piece. Smashing it down. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm getting a little bit of an effect like that. Okay, just some extra little pieces here and there. I notice those are all dark green. Maybe if I find a piece of light green. Now when it comes to this clump foliage that you put on your edges or your, I don't know, road banks or whatever you want to call them, less is more. So you only need a couple of pieces per side. You don't really need a whole lot of clump foliage. I consider these to be kind of like roadside bushes. I've noticed recently there's like, what do they call them? Tufts. And if you want to use a tuft, that'd be fine too. That actually might maybe look better. I don't know. But clump foliage is what I've been using for years, as you can tell from my tub there. Okay, so there. I've got a little piece here, there, and I've kind of gone with a variety of different colors. Now, do I need any down the middle? Sure, you can if you want. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece right here, and maybe a piece right there, and leave it at that. I'm not going to put it everywhere. I went with something a little lighter to kind of counteract this dark over here. See, every corner doesn't have one. Alright. And I consider that to be a finished road intersection. What did I use? I used the EPVC, and that's got a lot of flock stuck to the back of the plastic. It's just plastic cut out with a box knife, spackled, grit, painted, flocked, done. Alright, let me do one more. Let's do this one. Okay, remember my curved road, the one that I worked out that wasn't a perfect straight road? There it is. Let's go ahead and see what I want to do. Now you can put those tufts, doesn't have to be like that, it just happens to be all on flock. You can actually put those on the grit itself. I find the best look for it is the spot right where the grit and the flock merge. So like this is grit, this is flock. Right at that line, I feel, is probably the best spot for clump foliage because it kind of gives you that transition. Okay, that should be enough spots. Notice how I put a whole bunch of them out there? Okay. and you push it down into the glue. So basically the glue gets all over everything. Your fingers too, by the way. But it kind of hardens up your the clump foliage as well. So this might be too many spots. Remember what I said earlier, less is more. Whoa. Definitely less yellow. See, just that little piece right there makes a difference. It doesn't have to be giant. It's just you're looking for that color contrast. Ah, here's my light green. I was like, where the heck is my light green in there? There you go. And you've got various pieces. And when you put that on the table, that will look a lot better than just that. See the difference? All right. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and checking out this road tutorial using the ePVC. I do have one of these roads still made out of plywood. I think it might be this one. No. This one? Yeah, this one. Okay. See? Couldn't even tell the difference. Once you get it all painted up and flocked and everything, they're the same. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Okay. Some terrain builders say that you have to put those popsicle sticks down on the side to keep this from warping, right? Because this is the ePVC, to keep it from warping. Well, guess what? I didn't put it on this. I put the tape on there like I showed you. Has it warped? You tell me. Doesn't look like it. All right, now let's move some of this junk out of the way. Let's put it on the table and let's see what it looks like. Now, my phalangites are not finished yet, but you get the idea. That looks good. Put that up to the edge of the table, you know, where you're gaming at. Of course, there'd need to be another one over there, but you know. So what do you think? They haven't warped. All right, guys. Thanks for coming out and checking out this terrain tutorial on how to build country roads or dirt roads. It'd be done a little bit differently if you were doing like a paved road or a tarmac or something like that. So like if you're doing a modern game or something like that, you might need tarmac. Or if you're doing a city, you might need some cobblestone. So that's going to be a future video. I'll see you then.